Morbid Facts, Part 142. In 2009, a Florida woman named Marie Moore shot and killed her own son at a shooting range before taking her own life. She had left a note that said, "I'm so sorry. I had to send my son to heaven and myself to hell." She said that she could have only killed herself, but felt that she needed to, quote, save her son and the rest of the world. She wrote, "Hopefully when I die, there will be 1,000 years of peace." Two murderers can be seen in the background of Mark Jackson's Hoops basketball card from 1990. The Menendez brothers had murdered their parents and bought courtside tickets with their parents' money before they were convicted. In 1949, 12-year-old Charles Cohen hid inside of a closet while a mass murderer shot and killed his whole family. Nearly 70 years later, his granddaughter would survive the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting by hiding in a closet.
The photo behind me looks pretty normal, right? Kinda. This is a photo that was taken in 1912. Who you're looking at is 11-year-old Giles Newsom. Though he was only 11, he had a job in a mill. A piece of machinery fell on his foot, which caused him to lose his balance and put his hand down on another piece of machinery. The reason that he's wearing the cast is because the machine ended up tearing off 2 of his fingers.
Experiments that went horribly wrong. Sheep on meth. So for some reason, the government has an obsession with putting meth in things that don't belong with meth in them, and the sheep were no exception. So they gave 16 sheep speedball, which is a combination of methamphetamines, and they basically tased them to see what the effects of being tased under methamphetamines would be, if it affected the person or not. Well, after being tased pretty much constantly throughout the day, all 16 of the sheep died. Emma Eckstein's surgery. After being diagnosed with hysteria and chronic masturbation by Dr. Sigmund Freud, his solution for treating this was cauterizing the nose. What he essentially did was gave her 2nd and 3rd degree burns along her nasal passages, which left her horribly disfigured, after he left some medical gauze in her nose and forgot to take it out, which left her looking horrible for the rest of her life.
This woman sold her children to pay rent. This photo first appeared in a Chicago newspaper back in 1948. The mother hiding her face is Lucille Chalifoux. Her and her husband Ray were jobless, facing eviction, and actually sold their 5 children. And yes, I said 5 because she's actually pregnant in the picture. The children faced many hard times after being sold, some of which included sickness, mental illness, and abuse. This little girl is Ray Chalifoux. She claims to have been sold for only $2 so her mom could have bingo money. Even worse, it wasn't long after the mother remarried and had 4 more daughters, who she didn't sell. Ray actually still has the dress she was wearing in that picture. But to end this tragic story on a high note, in 2013 some of the siblings got to finally reunite.
Morbid Facts, Part 140. In 2009, actor Dean Winters suffered from a bacterial infection and died in the ambulance but was revived. After recovering, he developed gangrene and had multiple amputations and skin grafts. He is now better known for playing Mayhem in Allstate insurance commercials. Janis Joplin changed her will just 2 days before dying at the age of 27. She gave her estate to her parents and gave additional cash to her siblings. She even set aside $2,500 for her friends to throw a party in her honor and to, quote, get blasted after I'm gone. Cat burning was a form of entertainment in France prior to the 1800s. People would gather cats in a net and burn them over a bonfire while they laughed and cheered. This was done mainly because cats were associated with witchcraft and were burned as symbols of the devil.
Photos behind me look pretty normal, right? Little bit. Each of these portraits were painted by the same artist. Each of them are a self-portrait of himself. However, in 1996, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Every year, he was asked to do a self-portrait of himself. Throughout these photos, you can see the deterioration of his mind from the Alzheimer's.
Morbid Facts that you didn't know about the Holocaust, Part 3. During World War II, Pope Pius XII told the United States that he couldn't confirm reports that Germany was executing Jews. But in 2020, newly unsealed documents revealed that he was lying and knew all along that the Holocaust was happening. Homosexual males were identified in concentration camps by downward-facing pink triangles. Because of this identification, many of them were still considered criminals after their camps were freed. As a result, many of them were sent back to prison to serve out their terms. In the 1980s, a Holocaust denial group offered $50,000 to anyone who could prove that gas chambers were used at Auschwitz. They were forced by judge to pay that and an additional $40,000 to Auschwitz survivor Mel Mermelstein, who provided the proof.
This is why you should never explore abandoned ships. In 2014, the US Navy decided to decommission one of its oldest ships, so it brought it into port to be broken down for scrap. Before workers were allowed to actually start breaking it down, the foreman had to go on board and take pictures of every room. So late one night, the foreman spends about an hour walking through this abandoned ship with a flashlight, taking about 100 pictures. When he was done, he emailed the pictures to his boss, who quickly wrote back, "Who's the guy with the axe?" The foreman had no idea what he was talking about, but he noticed the boss had attached one of the pictures that he had just sent him. When he opened it, he nearly fainted. There, in the bowels of the ship, poking his head around a corner, was a faceless man wielding an axe. The foreman had spent over an hour in this hallway and never heard or saw this guy. The Navy searched the ship and never found this guy. They also reviewed security footage of the only entrance, and he never entered or left the ship.
Normal looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, part 20. This photograph was taken by Rodney Alcala, the dating game murderer. No one knows who this woman is, not even Rodney. He killed over 130 women and claims that this one was just lost among the shuffle. While this appears to be an ordinary group of people eating ice cream and playing music, it is actually a group of officers at the concentration camp Auschwitz during the Holocaust. This is Sheila Frederick, a flight attendant. She noticed that a terrified girl was accompanied by an older man, so she left a note in the bathroom on which the victim wrote that she needed help. She contacted the police, who saved her from a human trafficker. The Soviet Union actually used to airbrush people out of photos when they fell out of favor with the leadership. While this photo may appear to be of a little girl holding her younger sibling, it is actually of Lena Medina, the youngest girl to ever give birth, who had her son in Peru in 1939, after she was sexually assaulted at the age of 5.
These are some morbid facts that you didn't know about the Columbine massacre. This Columbine class of '99 photo was taken just a few months before the shooting. In the top left corner, shooters Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold can be seen making shooting gestures at the camera while wearing sunglasses. This is a game of hangman that a group of students played while they were locked in their classroom during the shooting. While being at one mass shooting is horrifying and unlucky enough, Regina Rode was at 2 of them. 8 years after surviving Columbine, she was a student at Virginia Tech when 32 people were killed. On the day of the shooting, 2 10-kilogram bombs were planted in the school cafeteria right before lunch. Luckily, the bombs failed to detonate, otherwise all 488 students in the cafeteria at the time could have died. These melted chairs were the result of Dylan Klebold trying to set off one of those bombs with a Molotov cocktail.
The photo behind me looks pretty normal, right? The photo was taken of snowboarder Marco Safredi. Marco wanted to prove to everybody that he could snowboard down Mount Everest. Upon climbing to the top, he was probably already exhausted. He still wanted to pull off the stunt, though. This photo was taken as he was contemplating his decisions. Right after this photo was taken, he descended, only to never be seen again.
Did you know that some forensic scientists can tell how long a body has been dead by the bugs that are present in the corpse or not present in the corpse? Thank you for coming to my Morbid Minute.
Morbid Facts, Part 34. Famous Austrian composer and painter Arnold Schoenberg had triskaidekaphobia, aka a fear of the number 13. He feared the number so much that he called it 12A instead of 13. For years he was terrified that he would die on Friday the 13th when he was 76, since 7 plus 6 equals 13. In fact, he was so scared of that day that he stayed in bed all night until he essentially scared himself to death. He died of a heart attack just minutes before midnight. As per his request, the creator of Pringles had his ashes stored in a Pringles can when he died. 18 months after colon surgery, an Australian woman returned to the hospital when she was experiencing severe stomach pain. Apparently, the surgeons had accidentally left their scissors inside of her abdomen.
Here are some more morbid facts and theories that you may not have already known. There is record of a 28-year-old breathing in a fir tree seed, and it sprouted and grew in her lung. So fir trees can grow in your lungs. There are 40 supervolcanoes around the world that are capable of claiming up to 1 billion lives, and we are 24,000 years overdue for a massive eruption. There is a brain-eating parasite that lives in lakes and rivers in the southern US that goes up your nose into your brain and breaks down your tissues. 1 in 50 people have a brain aneurysm that just hasn't ruptured yet. There are over 200 dead bodies on Mount Everest, and because it's too dangerous to hike up and get those bodies, it now serves as a marker for other hikers. If you're in a train station, 15% of the air you're breathing is dead skin. And the dead outnumber the living by 15-1.
Morbid Facts, Part 5. After being diagnosed with polio at age 3, Diane Odell spent nearly 60 years encased in a 750-pound iron lung. She only died when a power outage shut down the machine that had been keeping her alive for decades. Do you know why you wake up right before you're about to die in a dream? It's because your brain doesn't know what it's actually like to experience death. In 1901, Madame Bobbin from England fell ill late into her pregnancy and was pronounced dead. But a few days later, one of the nurses was tormented by the idea that she may have been buried alive. After Madame Bobbin's father was alerted of this, he demanded that the grave be dug up immediately. When the coffin was open, he was horrified to find the corpse of a baby with an uncut umbilical cord laying between his now dead daughter's legs.
Creepy Facts Part 1. In 1945, Lloyd Olson beheaded one of his chickens, but it didn't die. It went on living for 18 more months. There's a parasite called the guinea worm that can enter your body through drinking infected water, but you won't notice anything until about a year later, when it breaks through your skin to release larvae, and at that point the worm is a meter long. Judith Barcy, the girl who voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time, was killed in 1988 when she was just 10 years old, along with her mother, by her father in a double murder-suicide.
Even more morbid facts. Drowning in fresh water is not the same as drowning in salt water, because when you drown in salt water, you're basically drowning on your own fluids. Countess Elizabeth Bathory was a murderer who used to bathe in her victims' blood to help retain her youth and beauty. If a loved one passes, you do not have to send them to a funeral home. In fact, it's perfectly legal to load them up and take them home and just have the funeral there. That is actually how it has been done for centuries. In about 2 hours after you die, your eyes begin to fog up, and they progressively get more and more foggy within the next 2 days. When you are embalmed, your body is completely drained of its blood. What happens to all that blood? It goes down the drain.
Morbid Facts, Part 135. George Washington died when his doctors were trying to cure his sore throat. They were using a process called bloodletting, which involved draining a patient's blood until their illness was cured. He lost nearly half his blood before they stopped the treatment, and he died just a few hours later. According to the FBI, if you're murdered in the US, there's only about a 40% chance that your murderer will be found and punished. When penguins can't find love, they often waddle off to die alone. An Iranian man named Amu Haji is known as the world's dirtiest man. The 80-year-old man hasn't showered in 65 years and claims that cleanliness makes man sick. He has survived off of eating rotten animal carcasses and smokes feces out of a pipe. He also lives in complete isolation, and yes, ladies, he's single.